I met Elizabeth just after I'd finished the pilot of the series. I was driving back to Hollywood. I was on Little Santa Monica Boulevard, and I pulled up beside her, beside this maroon BMW, and this very pretty girl was there, and I smiled at her, and she smiled at me, and I pulled her over. I followed her, and I pulled her over, and I actually said, "Let me see your license and registration." She had just come down about a year earlier from Tahoe, and she was a ski bum. And she'd come down to LA, and she was teaching at Center for Early Education. I wasn't all fired to get into a relationship, or certainly to get married. And she, she kept after me, and then eventually I succumbed. Ari was, I used to call her Blueberry Eyes. She was a wonderful kid. Before Ari was born, Elizabeth got what they call placenta previa. It's where the placenta detaches a little bit from the uterus. So she had bed rest for like the last 3 months of her pregnancy. And then when she was delivering, they had post-uterine bleeding, and they couldn't stop it. Eventually they stopped the bleeding, but she had lost so much blood she had to be transfused, and that's how she got the HIV infection. And then through her breast milk, she gave it to her daughter, to Ari, our daughter. I was directing my first feature film down in Miami. And Ari was not doing well. She was, she looked terrible, and she was just stomach pains, and she was, so we put her in a hospital for a bunch of tests. She had a battery of tests over at UCLA, and we found out about the HIV, and that Elizabeth was infected, and my son Jake was infected. We knew enough to know that it was the Scarlet Letter, that we were, we had to really shut down and be very private. We ended up having a conference with Ari's school. They came over to our house, the board of directors and the headmaster, whatever, and we said, this is what we've got and what we're going to deal with, and we want to tell you about it so you can tell us what you're prepared to do. And they basically asked us to take Ari out of school, because they had no way of, dealing with that phenomenon. They didn't know enough about it. There was too little and too much perceived danger. And so, so you knew that wherever you publicized it or admitted it or whatever, you were going to run into that wall of fear. So you just said, no, I can't do that. The press guy kept getting closer and closer, and and they were doing all kinds of wonderful things that the press does, trying to get to my sister and sisters, posing as rabbis, and they did everything they could to get that story. I went after one paparazzi guy who had parked across the street from our house and was taking pictures. I went after him with a golf club. We both knew the game was up. They were going to come out. They were going to come after us, and we decided to beat them to the punch, and to take advantage of the situation, turn it into a positive. Elizabeth utilized the celebrity brilliantly in terms of raising money. Money talks. You got to be able to raise money. Up to that point, it was keep Ari alive, get her medical attention, do everything you can for her. And in the course of that, Elizabeth learned what the medical establishment was not able to do, didn't have the ability to do, hadn't had the ability to do. She, the paucity of research and prioritization for pediatrics. So that was her education. And then when Ari passed, she hit the ground running. when she created the foundation, she created a mission statement that was all about, it was three-pronged. It was about training people to do research, advocacy, giving a voice to those people who had no voice when it came to the pharmaceutical company's misbehavior, design negligence, or whatever you want to call it. And the third prong was research. She, through a couple of friends, was able to connect with Washington, D.C. She was able to connect with people in the Reagan administration, and she found senators and others that would stand with her. She and I both testified before Congress twice about the fact that the drug companies, the pharmaceutical companies, weren't dosing the medicine, whatever medicines they had, for children. Why? Because that was not a profitable market for them. It became beneficial for politicians to, when they were brave enough, to be able to, come out in support of us, and, it became beneficial for them in terms of their own political life. In the beginning, she was so scared to speak publicly. I used to coach her. And she and she got better and better at it, and then she did the Democratic National Convention. They developed a drug, which now is a drug that, with 95% efficacy, interrupts the transmission of the virus from mother to child. Well, that has had a huge implication in terms of around the world, in terms of children, and trying to stop the spread of the disease.